I boarded the flight like any other day, just trying to get home. My name's Marcus. I'm 15, and yeah, I was flying solo. First class. My mom works crazy hours and saved up her airline points for this one trip so I could travel comfortably to visit my grandparents. She insisted on it, even though I told her I was fine with economy. I was wearing a hoodie, earbuds in, and carrying a backpack that had seen better days. The flight attendant smiled and pointed me to my seat, 3A. Window seat. Nice. As I sat down and pulled out a book, I noticed a woman across the aisle already staring at me. She looked mid-50s, pearls, blazer, that kind of polished energy. The moment I made eye contact, she leaned over. "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" she asked, with that fake smile that doesn't reach the eyes. I blinked. "Yeah, 3A. She didn't back down. "This is first class. Are your parents on board?" I shook my head, trying not to roll my eyes. "I'm flying alone." She made this loud sigh and pressed her call button. A flight attendant came quickly. "I'm just concerned," the woman said, gesturing toward me. "It seems unusual." The flight attendant looked confused. "Ma'am, is there a specific issue?" "Yes," she said firmly. "I don't think he belongs in this cabin." The air around us froze. And then, it got worse. She pulled out her phone. She was calling the police. Right there. Before we even took off. But what happened next? She didn't see it coming. The moment she said, "I'm calling the authorities," the whole cabin went quiet. Everyone in first class turned their heads. Phones came out. People were watching now, some recording, others just stunned. I felt my stomach twist. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I knew exactly where this was headed. The flight attendant's eyes widened. "Ma'am," she said firmly, "there's no need for that. His boarding pass was scanned. He's in the correct seat." The woman wasn't having it. "I don't care what the scanner said. I want him moved. He's making me uncomfortable." That's when a tall man in a business suit 2 rows up stood up. "Uncomfortable? Ma'am, all he did was sit down." She glared at him. "This isn't any of your business." Another woman chimed in, "It is when you start calling the police over someone sitting in first class like they don't belong here." The gate agent entered the plane with a walkie-talkie, looking alert. The woman waved her hand frantically. "Yes. You, get him off this flight." The gate agent looked at me, then at the flight attendant, who whispered something in her ear. The gate agent nodded slowly. "His name is Marcus. He's a minor, traveling alone. His ticket's confirmed. There is no issue." The woman's face went red. And then, another voice. A quiet but firm voice from behind us said, "Actually, I'm his mother." Everyone turned. No one expected that. A hush fell over the cabin. Standing in the aisle was a tall woman in her late 30s, dressed in a sharp blue blazer, calm but commanding. She had just stepped onto the plane at the last minute. She wasn't flying, but she had walked in from the gate. "I work for the airline," she said coolly, holding up a badge clipped to her lanyard. "I'm Marcus's mother. I escorted him through security myself and ensured he was properly seated. I was watching from the gate and came in when I saw this unfold." The woman in pearls visibly stiffened. "Oh, I didn't know. You didn't care to know," Marcus's mom replied, not raising her voice but cutting through the air like a blade. "You just assumed something was wrong the moment you saw my son sitting in first class. He was polite, quiet, and following every rule." Passengers began nodding. The business traveler from earlier added, "It's sad that a kid can't even sit in the seat his family paid for without being treated like a problem." The flight attendant gently stepped forward. "Ma'am," she said to the woman in pearls, "we're going to have to ask you to deboard the plane. You're disrupting the flight." "Me?" she gasped. You're removing me? The airline rep, Marcus's mom, nodded. Yes. For attempting to escalate a false situation and creating unnecessary panic. The woman looked around. No one came to her defense. In fact, someone clapped. Then a few more joined in. Within seconds, the entire first-class cabin was applauding, but not for her. The clapping grew louder, echoing down the cabin. The woman's face was frozen in a mix of disbelief and humiliation. Her lips tightened, but she didn't speak. Maybe it was the realization that no one, not one person, was on her side anymore. Security arrived at the front of the plane, alerted by the flight crew. One of the officers leaned in and said something quietly to her. Whatever it was, it made her shoulders drop. Wordlessly, she gathered her designer handbag, stood up, and began walking down the aisle. She couldn't even make eye contact with anyone. Passengers shifted in their seats to give her space, but not one gave her a sympathetic glance. As she passed Marcus, he didn't move. He just looked out the window, trying not to cry. Trying to stay strong. But his mom leaned over and whispered something in his ear. He gave a tiny nod. Once the woman was gone, the cabin finally relaxed. The tension broke. A flight attendant got on the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. Thank you for your patience. We'll be taking off shortly. As Marcus's mom started to step off the plane, the businessman in row 2 turned and asked, "You're really not flying with him?" She smiled. He's got this. But now he knows, he's not alone. And just like that, she walked out. Marcus sat back in his seat. Head high. Earbuds in. And for the rest of that flight, everyone treated him exactly the way he deserved. With respect that we landed 3 hours later. As we taxied to the gate, a few passengers gave me encouraging nods. One lady even handed me a note on a napkin. It said, "You handled yourself with strength and grace. Don't let anyone make you feel small. You belong anywhere you sit." I folded it and put it in my pocket. At the baggage claim, I saw my grandparents waving from behind the glass. I ran toward them, dropping my bag halfway, grinning for the first time since takeoff. My grandpa gave me a big bear hug and asked how the flight went. I looked back for a second. The same airline staffer, my mom's co-worker, gave me a wink from across the terminal. Word had spread. I could tell. It was eventful, I said, smiling. But I'm good. And I meant it. Because sometimes, it only takes 5 minutes, and one brave moment, for the truth to speak louder than assumptions. And on that flight, it did. Loud and clear. A week later, my mom called me into the kitchen, phone in hand and a grin on her face. "Marcus," she said, "you're not gonna believe this. Someone on the plane had uploaded the incident to social media." The video, just under 2 minutes, showed the woman demanding I be removed, the moment my mom stepped in, and the entire cabin turning on her. It went viral. I mean millions of views. Comments flooded in, "That kid handled it like a champ. The mom's calm strength. Iconic. Glad the passengers stood up for what's right." Even some news sites picked it up, without using names or showing my face. Just the story. My story. I didn't want fame. But knowing that people saw the truth. That they cared. That meant everything. And as for the woman. Well, the airline quietly issued a statement days later. They didn't name her either, but they confirmed she had been banned from flying with them again due to her behavior. Actions have consequences. Turns out, so does kindness, and courage. And a whole plane full of people proved that. A few days later, sitting on my grandparents' porch with the sun setting behind the trees, I finally had a quiet moment to think. It hit me just how fast everything had changed. One moment, I was just a kid excited about his first solo flight. The next, I was the center of a confrontation I never asked for, judged before I even said a word. But what I'll never forget isn't her. It's the others. The man who spoke up. The woman who backed him. The entire cabin that clapped, not for drama, but for justice. People who didn't know me, didn't owe me anything, but still refused to let silence win. It showed me something I'll carry forever: you don't always need to shout to stand strong. Sometimes, just being there, just not looking away, is enough to flip the whole script. I still fly now. I still sit where my ticket says I belong. And I walk down every jet bridge knowing one thing: I earned my seat. Not because of who approved it, but because of who I am. And no one can take that away from me. My name's David. I was in seat 2C that day, just trying to get to a business meeting in Chicago. When that woman started questioning the kid in 3A, I wasn't sure what I was hearing at first. But then she said something that made my stomach turn: "Are you sure you're in the right cabin?" It wasn't the words, it was the tone. The assumption. The entitlement. I glanced over and saw the kid, hoodie, headphones, clearly just minding his own business. He didn't even flinch. That told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't going to sit there and do nothing. So I stood up and said something. Not to be a hero. Just because I imagined my own son in that seat, being made to feel like he didn't belong. And I'd hoped someone would speak up for him too. What shocked me was how quickly the whole cabin followed. People didn't need convincing. They were waiting for someone to break the silence. And when his mom walked in, I've never seen someone command a room so calmly. She didn't yell. She didn't make a scene. She corrected the narrative with facts and class. It reminded me, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just show up with truth and dignity. That kid, Marcus, he kept his cool better than most adults I know. And I hope someday he knows just how many of us left that flight a little different. A little braver. A little more aware. My name's Sarah, and I've worked as a flight attendant for over 12 years. I've seen a lot at 35,000 feet, good, bad, and everything in between. But that flight, I'll never forget. We hadn't even pushed back yet when I got the call button from seat 3B. The woman was tense, eyes locked on the teenage boy beside her. She leaned in and whispered, "I don't think he belongs here." I knew what she meant. But I also knew the truth. Marcus had boarded early. We'd verified his ticket. He was polite. Quiet. No issues whatsoever. Still, I stayed calm. "He's in the right seat, ma'am." But she didn't back off. She made a scene. Loud enough for other passengers to hear. And then, to my disbelief, she pulled out her phone and said she was calling the police. At that moment, everything froze. I've handled turbulence, emergency landings, even medical scares. But this was different. You can train for safety. You can't train for decency. Thankfully, others stepped up. A businessman. A woman across the aisle. They weren't loud or aggressive. Just firm. United. And then came the twist none of us expected: the kid's mom walking on board with a badge and a voice full of calm fire. She didn't yell. She didn't need to. She simply reminded everyone what right looks like. We removed the disruptive passenger. Not because she asked questions, but because she turned assumptions into accusations. Marcus sat there like a rock, head high, not saying a word. And in that moment, he taught all of us something. Not every hero wears a cape. Some just wear headphones, and keep their cool. The incident reached corporate within hours. By the next morning, a full internal report was circulating among senior leadership. Passenger video clips had already gone viral, and while no names were public, the company knew exactly who was involved. The flight crew was debriefed. The gate staff submitted statements. Marcus's mom, an off-duty airline employee, had already filed her own report. Calm, precise, professional. Her actions were by the book, but what stood out most was how she de-escalated a potentially explosive situation with zero drama. The VP of Customer Experience sent out an internal memo that same day: "We will not tolerate behavior that targets or profiles passengers based on assumptions. What happened on board Flight 482 was unacceptable, and our team handled it exactly as they should, with integrity, patience, and resolve." Behind the scenes, the woman who caused the disruption was added to a no-fly list for the airline, pending a formal review. But more importantly, corporate quietly reached out to Marcus and his family. A personal letter of apology. A gesture of appreciation. And a promise: more staff would undergo training, not just for protocol, but for bias awareness. Not because of PR. Because it was the right thing to do. And while Marcus never asked for the spotlight, the airline made sure he knew, his presence didn't just belong in first class. It sparked a shift in how thousands of employees would view the power of one quiet kid, in a moment that revealed so much. 2 months later, Marcus boarded another flight. Same airline. Same first-class seat. But this time, something was different. As he handed over his boarding pass, the gate agent smiled wider than usual. "Welcome back, Marcus," she said warmly. "Glad to have you with us again." He nodded politely, still humble, still quiet. But this time, his steps were lighter. No glares. No tension. Just people doing what they were supposed to do, treating a young man with respect. As a paying passenger. As someone who belonged. When he settled into his seat, the flight attendant brought him a ginger ale and said softly, "You're kind of a legend around here." He gave a shy laugh. "Really? Really?" she winked. "You reminded all of us why we do this job." As the plane lifted off, Marcus gazed out the window: clouds below, sky above, peace within. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. Because sometimes, one flight can change more than just your destination. It can change everything.